Have you ever felt that pull, that deep, almost physical need to help, to understand, to feel what someone else is going through? We admire it in others, don't we? We call them compassionate, kind, sometimes even saints. Figures like Mother Teresa, Florence Nightingale, Albert Schweitzer, they stand as monuments to human empathy. But have you ever stopped to consider the cost of that profound empathy? We put these figures on pedestals, showering them with admiration. Yet history whispers a darker, more uncomfortable truth. What if I told you that the very societies that revere these saints are often the ones that systematically exploit their kindness, draining them until there's nothing left? Today we're going to explore this disturbing paradox. Why society seems to burden and sometimes break its most empathetic souls, and what that reveals about our own complex psychology. Stay with me, because understanding this might just change how you see empathy in others, and perhaps more importantly, in yourself. Now, when I talk about saints here, I'm not just talking about religious figures canonized by a church. I mean those individuals throughout history and even today whose lives are defined by an almost overwhelming capacity for empathy. That ability not just to understand another's feelings, that's cognitive empathy, but to share them, affective empathy. It's a powerful force, driving incredible acts of selflessness and service. Think about Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp, right? We remember her tending to wounded soldiers in the horrors of the Crimean War. Her empathy was visceral. She wasn't just managing care, she was feeling the suffering around her. And that drove her relentless fight for sanitation and reform, saving countless lives. Her actions were rooted in a profound connection to the pain of others. But what was the context? Mid-19th century Britain. A rigid class system, a military bureaucracy deeply resistant to change, and societal norms that barely tolerated a woman, even an upper-class one. Working in such a sordid environment, her empathy fueled her mission, but it also placed her in direct conflict with powerful entrenched systems. As her biographer, Cecil Woodham Smith, chronicled, Nightingale didn't just face external resistance. The sheer weight of the suffering she witnessed and the constant battle against indifference took a massive toll on her own health, leading to decades of illness often dismissed by contemporaries. This wasn't unique. Psychologists today talk about compassion fatigue or secondary traumatic stress, particularly in helping professions. It's the emotional and physical exhaustion from witnessing and absorbing the trauma of others. Nightingale was arguably one of history's most prominent early cases. But there's another layer, the pedestal effect. When we elevate someone to sainthood, we implicitly place immense expectations on them. We admire their selflessness, yes, but we can also begin to see them less as complex humans with limits and needs, and more as inexhaustible symbols of virtue. Their empathy becomes not just their trait, but our expectation, even our demand. We stop asking if they can give more, only how much. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever felt that pressure? Maybe not on a historical scale, but have you felt obligated to always be the listener, the helper, the strong one? Because people expect it of you, because your own empathy makes it hard to say no, even when you're running on empty. Let me know quietly in the comments if that resonates. Consider another figure, Dr. Albert Schweitzer, a brilliant theologian, philosopher, and musician in Europe who, driven by what he called reverence for life, abandoned his established careers in his late 30s to become a physician and set up a hospital in Lambaréné in what is now Gabon, West Africa, around 1913. His empathy extended not just to humans, but to all living things. He dedicated decades to providing medical care in incredibly challenging conditions, funded largely by his own organ concerts and writings. The context? Colonial Africa, early 20th century. Pervasive disease, limited resources, cultural misunderstandings, and the condescending attitudes of the colonial powers. Schweitzer's empathy drove him to immense personal sacrifice, but it also made him dependent on external funding and navigating complex political and social realities. While revered globally, winning the Nobel Peace Prize, his single-minded dedication, fueled by empathy, meant constant struggle, isolation, and criticism from those who questioned his methods or motives. He poured himself out, driven by that empathetic core. So, How does this exploitation mechanism work psychologically? It often starts with recognition. Those who are less empathetic, or more Machiavellian in their thinking, focused on utility and outcome, can identify individuals high in affective empathy. They see the willingness to give, the discomfort with conflict, the desire to maintain harmony. As Machiavelli himself might observe, they see someone whose goodness makes them predictable and potentially manageable. Institutions can do this too. A hospital relies on its nurses' empathy to function, but might resist calls for better staffing or pay. A charity leverages the compassion of its volunteers, sometimes pushing them past reasonable limits. Even followers of a saintly figure can develop a sense of entitlement to their leader's time, energy, and emotional labor, forgetting the human cost. There's a cognitive dissonance, as psychologist Paul Bloom touches upon in his work, Questioning Pure Empathy. We value the outcome of their empathy, help, comfort, sacrifice, without always valuing the well-being of the empath themselves. And the breaking point? For Nightingale, it was debilitating illness. For others, it might be burnout, disillusionment, a retreat from the world, or a quiet fading away, their initial empathetic fire extinguished by relentless demand. The tragedy is that the very quality that made them extraordinary becomes the instrument of their potential undoing, often facilitated by the very people or systems that claim to admire them. This isn't just ancient history or tales of famous figures. Think about the pressure on healthcare workers today, the burnout rates among social activists, the demands placed on online creators expected to be perpetually available and emotionally giving to their audience. Think about that friend who is always the one everyone calls in a crisis, the family member who takes on all the emotional labor. The burden of saints plays out in miniature in our daily lives. So, what's the takeaway? It's not to kill our empathy. The world desperately needs it. But it is a call to cultivate intelligent kindness, the kind Machiavelli, perhaps surprisingly, points towards, kindness protected by awareness. This means recognizing patterns of exploitation. It means developing what Eleanor Roosevelt called her public voice, learning to present ourselves effectively, taking credit where it's due, and communicating boundaries clearly. It means practicing compassionate distance, managing our accessibility, understanding that saying no isn't selfish, it's necessary for sustainability. It requires emotional self-regulation, feeling our empathy fully, but choosing strategically how and when we express it and act upon it. The true power of figures like Nightingale and Schweitzer wasn't just their capacity to feel, it was their capacity to act on that feeling. But their stories also serve as a profound cautionary tale. We must learn to protect the flame of empathy, both in ourselves and in others. Because a world where the kindest souls are simply used up and discarded isn't just sad, it's unsustainable. Let's strive to build a world that not only admires empathy, but actively safeguards the well-being of the empathetic, allowing their virtue not just to exist, but to effectively and sustainably shape our future for the better. If you found this exploration of the psychology behind empathy and its burdens interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe to Historic Psychology for more deep dives into the fascinating intersection of history and the human mind. Thanks for watching.